Right, we're rolling. On this podcast, we'll be talking about different areas of business and all things marketing. My name is Dave Doyle.
And I'm Dave Alton. This is Social Antics, another marketing podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Social Antics, another marketing podcast. Week 14, Dave, how are you?
Week 14. I'm looking forward to this week, actually.
Another guest.
Yeah,
we're
talking to an actual guest as opposed to talking to you, so that's always a good thing.
Yeah. Makes your week.
Leading
up to this.
Leading up to this, all I was thinking about. No, I'm looking forward to today, no, I have to say.
So today we have Ray Keogh, who is a Dublin-based videographer and photographer, mainly known for his work in the music industry, but has done a serious amount of work in corporate and working with different corporate brands. So it'd be great to get Ray's advice and insight into working with content creators.
Yeah, 100%. Again, for me, and I keep on saying it, is that regardless of like your analytics and your targeting and all the rest of it, your creative is still your differentiator. Mm-hmm. Your creative is what's going to help you grab attention online in a world which is entirely driven by attention, and we use content as a means of influencing consumers and consumers' behaviour, and ultimately your creative is what is the most important thing now, I think, for brand building. And look, Ray is an expert on it, so let's hear what he has to say.
Based in Dublin, Ray graduated with distinction from Ireland's renowned Ballyfermot College of Further Education, where he studied television production. Going on to become one of Ireland's best-known photographers within the Irish music scene, Ray has done shoots for groups such as MCD, Aiken, Westlife, Wild Youth, Warner Music, Universal Music, Kodaline, and many more. Covering all aspects in the video making process, Ray has worked professionally in corporate video production, with clients such as Primark, LinkedIn, Centra, Guinness, Boots, just to name a few. In relation to music, Ray has done shoots for some of the biggest names in the business, working with acts such as Westlife, The Script, Killswitch Engage, to name a few, within iconic venues such as Tree Arena, Croke Park, the Olympia, At The Marquee, and with festivals such as Longitude, Electric Picnic, Castlepalooza, and more. Welcome to Social Antics, Ray.
Great, thanks for having me along.
No problem. How's things going?
Not too bad. Kind of quiet these days, but
I can imagine the music stuff has kind of gone very quiet. Obviously, there's nothing really happening.
Yeah, I don't see that kind of coming back anytime soon. It's the first thing to go, and I'd say it's definitely going to be one of the last things to come back. So,
although I did see something during the week on, was it Claire Byrne, where they were looking at gigs in bubbles. Did you see that? Basically, they were putting people into bubbles. Do you think that'll come about?
I think that was the Flaming Lips. I think they have
That's
a thing
right.
in their set where the guy always jumps out onto the crowd in the bubble. So I think that was just a kind of like a promo stunt for them to kind of promote them, because they did that as well near the start on, I think it was Jimmy Fallon or something like that.
Yeah.
Just joking about like social distance bubbles, but yeah, I'd love to give it a go.
I think maybe we go back to the start. So I mentioned Ballyfermot. What made you possibly go down this route of media, photography, television? What made you go down that route?
Before I went back to college, I was working, just doing jobs. I was working with UPC and all that. And the thing with UPC, if you called up to report that the broadband or TV or something wasn't working, I was the person that came out. So I was all over the place driving, but I always had a camera with me. So this was before camera phones and that. I'd always have a digital camera or something with me, and whenever I'd be in different places, I'd just be taking photographs of everything and anything, and I'd just be throwing them up on social media. I think it was Bebo back in them days.
Well, we mentioned Bebo last week.
It's making a comeback.
Yeah, but all of our photos are gone, unfortunately. But it's I was always just taking photos. Everyone was just always commenting on it, saying that like, oh, you take a photo of anything. And the way I kind of just saw it was, how many conversations do you have with people back in them days when you'd say something and they'd be like, oh, if only I had a camera. Like, I know these days everybody has them, but back in them days nobody did have them. But I was always taking photographs, and it was just a hobby that I just always loved to do, and kind of got really into taking photos of everything and anything. Got my first DSLR then, I think it was around 2009, and start getting a bit more into the hobby. And then with the way the recession happened, I ended up not being able to work for a while. So I just went back to college and just decided, why not give this camera thing a go? So looked up a few different courses. I knew Ballyfermot was a great media college, saw that they had a TV production course. So I'd just done so much photography over the years. I was starting to get into video. I just decided to give that course a go and just went from there.
I think even I actually, when you mentioned Ballyfermot there, I was explaining to Dave actually during the week about Ballyfermot, like, you know, he hadn't really heard too much about it, but the caliber, I suppose, that it's after producing over the years in terms of media, broadcast, journalism, TV, print, the whole lot, like it's a great hub, I suppose, for media in Ireland, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really good. Like I think the first thing that really came out of it that kind of got a name was there was a guy that did animation, and after doing the animation course, he went on to work on a kind of well-known animated film called Avatar, and won an Oscar. And won an Oscar from it. So yeah. So through that kind of gave Ballyfermot a good name, that one of its ex-students went on to win an Oscar. And then they have a good music scene. They've, like, when you go in, you don't just learn the theory of it. They have like amazing, like the TV studio that I was working in was bigger than, like, I've worked in TV studios since leaving college, and it was bigger than some of the TV studios that I've worked in since. So it was great equipment, great. The teachers actually did work in the industry and came in, so you're getting real life hands-on kind of experience there. So it's not just kind of, I mean, I don't know if many lecturers in other places probably just read stuff and just give you text about what to do, and then you go out and learn it yourself. Just in there, it's very hands-on. You get great experience.
I think even if we look, like we've talked a lot here about, obviously with Dave coming from UCC, there's definitely a big difference, I suppose, in the practicality elements throughout those levels. Like, you probably wouldn't get that level of practical experience, would you?
Well, we have a film and screen media course in UCC specifically where you would learn the practicality, shall we say. But I suppose coming from my background, which is marketing, like, you can't possibly, in the space of 4 years where you're covering like a commerce degree, where you're covering accounting, finance, economics, marketing, PR, right? Like, you can't possibly then go into the depth of detail that you guys, for example, would have. And I think that's a good thing as well, I would say, because like what I would always say, and it's how I kind of produce any of my consultancy work as well, as that as a marketer, you probably have the kind of strategic outlook in terms of where something is meant to go, what it's going to do. So is it to do with brand building, brand recognition? And the theory comes into that then in terms of the various touch points that you're looking to hit. But ultimately, you need to hand it over to a professional videographer to actually capture what you are theorizing in your mind, shall we say. And I think the distinction there is very, very important. I think it's very, very rare, and you'll get marketing people who also do video, but I would very rarely come across someone who's good at both. You kind of need to really understand that these are two very, very unique and separate skill sets. And therefore, when you are looking to create content, it's going through a professional like Ray to actually make sure that you do the work right. And ultimately, like, I suppose if I could kind of theorize or kind of give a practical example about it, if I say that I want to communicate some sort of element of a brand's history or a brand's heritage, I might say that I want to communicate this, and I think this is a good way to do that. Whereas it's someone like Ray who'll say, I think this music is going to really help convey this particular messaging and meaning, or having this particular shot here at this particular point during that music cycle will convey a certain meaning and a certain message. And it's that nuance of understanding in terms of not only understanding the practicalities of shooting a film, but understanding how an audience consumes media, which is where a skill set like Ray becomes absolutely imperative to a marketer's arsenal, I think.
And what way do you think, have you had any thought maybe around the whole idea, as Dave said, about consumers consuming content? Basically, has it changed? Have you found, since you were studying television to now creating maybe corporate videos, do you think like that has changed how people's mindsets, attention spans, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like I think it was about 7 years ago now when I finished up in college, and social media was like, it was there, but the way it is now, it was kind of like at the birth of that. So when I went out into working from college, I was just very lucky that straight away I got taken on by a corporate production company. And even though I was able to do the videos and I knew how to do the videos and I knew how to work with clients. Working with them, because they were working with such big clients like Primark, Guinness, Citibank, all that, I got to see like your side of it, the branding and the marketing people coming in, and they would say they want this, and we'd know how to take their vision and work it into a video. So it's great getting that experience in that company. But through that, I got to work on some marketing campaigns. Like there was one that we did with Centra, and it was over time. We were building stuff and we had to keep trying to innovate and innovate. So we'd have to look at what was out there at the moment and try to not do the same, but come up with something different. So if other people see it, they'll kind of go, oh, that's not like everything else I'm seeing. I like that. I'll start doing that. And then that'll become the new norm. So it's trying to keep ahead of everything. But when you look at it back then to how it is now, because there's been years and years of that, Instagram has become more of a marketing tool than a social media platform. Other things are starting to come out now with TikTok. Video has become, like back then, most of these were all photography platforms, but now video has been introduced into a lot of them. And it's just the difference of how it has been over the last 7 years. It's really come along and progressed. And yeah, it's very different now compared to how it was back then.
I think we might go more into that in a few minutes, but I suppose when you mentioned there that, you know, you were definitely probably looking at the photo scene and doing photography stuff and then looking at the change into video. When did you kind of start looking at possibly I need to look more into video, or was it always that way for you? Or did you feel like, look, this is the way the industry is going, I need to look at it more?
Well, kind of from the time that I went up to college, I had just done photography as a hobby, and then I started getting into video before going to college. So when I came out of college, I kind of had the two things, but I kind of went straight into a video production company. So I went into it from that side. So I was able to do the corporate photography if it was needed, but I was mainly doing video. I think like at the start, a lot of people were doing photos. Video wasn't too popular, but then just as time went by, I think it was more so when like Instagram was purely photos in the beginning, then they started bringing out, I think it was only 15-second video that you could do at the start. That was probably about 6-7 years ago or something like that.
I suppose, yeah, it's maybe the last three years maybe that the whole, was it a minute on Instagram now, was only like, it's not massively
well
old, like,
yeah, recently it's up to a minute, but when it first came out it was only 15
that's
second
right, yeah,
videos.
it was 15 seconds first, yeah.
But like, even to be honest with you, at that time, because I was so into Instagram as a photography app, I actually thought at the start the video won't work. Not on this app. Video probably won't really work on Instagram because it's so heavily a photography app. So I downloaded Instagram around the time that it first came out, and it was just all photographers just posting up random photos. Then it started becoming a thing where people would start putting up quotes, and it kind of went from a photography app to people just putting up photos of their food, photos of quotes, and it started kind of like building from there. So I kind of saw Instagram from the very, very start up, and then I thought the video wouldn't have worked. But then after a while, video really started to take over on Instagram. And I think that's why when they saw how popular it was, because they only did 15 seconds, I'd say, just to kind of test it, and then saw how popular it became, decided to make it a minute. And I think that's when the video started to really hit companies that like, oh, we can actually do a lot more with video than photos.
And you mentioned there about working, you know, at the time working with kind of corporate clients and, you know, working with some, you know, brand and marketing people in those companies. Be honest now, we won't be insulted, but what was it like working with the branding and the marketing guys in the companies as a pure creative head, working with someone that's a bit more probably strategic, less creative, more strategy? How do you find working with people like that?
When I first got into the kind of higher end of the corporate world, it was a little bit hard for me because I was kind of going into it with the impression that they would come to you and say, you're the creative, we have this idea, you make it work for us. And we'd come up with all the ideas and we'd do the edits and everything. And then it would go back to the company. And then all of a sudden it would be, don't like this, don't like this, don't like this, don't like this. And it's, as a creative, like for young people that are starting out in the corporate world, early on, just try to realize that it's not all about you and your creativeness. The client does have input as well. Even though they're paying you for your creativity, they have an input and they have a vision as well. And you have to try and make their vision work. So in the beginning, I was always kind of going in with it that, well, they're the marketing people, so they deal with the marketing. we'll deal with the videos and we're right. But then after a while, it kind of takes a while. It takes a while to kind of realize that, you have to kind of like work with the people and you have to try and make their vision come true.
I think there's kind of, I think that there's a balancing act there, right? Because I've come across, so you come across loads of people. I've worked with marketing people that have this vision in their head that they don't really understand. It's kind of a muddled idea of what the creative is meant to look like. And therefore they try and pigeonhole the creative director or the videographer into doing exactly what they want when they don't really understand how it's going to be consumed, shall we say, because they're so dogmatic in terms of what their overall idea is. And I get, look, there are certain things that we as marketers need to be able to get across. So if your content is so all content has an objective, right? It's either for building brand awareness, creating a certain messaging or meaning behind the brand. Some content is entirely for customer acquisition. Some of it is for retargeting and re-engaging customers. So all of that stuff, I've no problem with being in the kind of the mind's eye of the marketer. But I've come across, and again, on both sides of the kind of the same coin, my philosophy is very much let the creative guys do what they need to do because they're the experts at this stuff. And unless they're a million miles off, then fine, you can rein them back a bit. Whereas I kind of find that there's a real sense of a kind of a law of diminishing marginal returns when you have so many people inputting into a piece of content. Everyone wants their little bit. And at the end of it, you end up something which is entirely unsynchronized, doesn't make sense, isn't immersive. And even though I kind of take the point that you're saying in terms of, you need to work with the client, there is a lot of there is a lot to be said for having a singular or a small team's vision being brought to life based on a particular brief. Whereas I think the more people that you get involved, it can kind of contaminate things a lot. That's what I find anyway. And again, I've worked with marketing teams who are just an absolute catastrophe in terms of, we want this or we want this, or could this little thing be different? And you're kind of going, you're ruining it. You're taking a vision and you're bastardizing it basically based on what your original idea is, rather than letting something kind of organically evolve into a really, really good piece of content.
Yeah, I've kind of seen that like with different companies, especially if you're working with like really, really big, like global companies where they have like layers of people. You're dealing with the person that has been asked to get a videographer, and he's dealing with you and he gives you the idea and you go through everything, and then you could be talking for ages, and then you can go out and then start working on the video. And then after the video comes out, you do the edits and send it off to him. They'll be back and forth, and then it'll be all good from him. Then he'll say, right, I'm going to send it to the people ahead and see what their opinion is. And then that might go to them, and then they might have to give it to their boss. And then by the time it comes back, it's like, right, we have a list of things that have to be changed. And like that, if you're dealing with the one person, you guys have been working on a vision. Everyone else has an idea, left it to him to work with you. But then when you go back, they all have to give their input, and then it just totally changes. So that's something that you, as a videographer, you kind of have to be aware of, that depending on the company, sometimes you might be just working with one person and it's their say is final. Other times you could be working with that it could go off to an entire marketing team, and they all start picking it apart. Then you have to go back and start making changes that probably weren't discussed pre-shooting. So yeah, it can kind of change things depending on how many people. I think it is better if you are going to approach a videographer or content creator or something, to try and keep it down to like as little amount of people giving input as possible. Give all the input at the start and then just leave it to the one person. And I think sometimes it has a better result than when it's picked apart. It just kind of falls apart then.
Yeah, I remember a number of years ago, we came up with this. I won't mention the brand, but no, certainly not. So they still give me a little bit of work today, actually. So I'm gonna leave them off. So like but the whole idea was that, like, and again, look, we can get into the debate in a while, but the difference between long form and short form content and stuff like that, and the kind of vision that I suppose myself and the videographer had at the time was a long form piece of content. Like, it was an actual story. It was something that, and we kind of always say it, if the content needs to be thumb stoppable, but then it needs to be immersive enough to keep someone engaged, shall we say. And that's what we were going for. And it went to the CEO of this particular company, and he basically came back and he said, oh yeah, but if you look at all of these ads, they're 30 seconds long. he was basically applying the old television ad logic to what we were trying to do, which completely ruined the concept. So eventually you just had basically a bunch of nice shots with kind of happy-go-lucky background music. But in terms of actually achieving anything, it did absolutely nothing. Everyone kind of patted themselves on the back afterwards and said, oh, isn't this a brilliant piece of content, without actually going back to, well, no, the objective of this was to achieve this, and you just completely cannibalized this. And people aren't going to watch it anyway because it's only 30 seconds and it doesn't communicate anything, or it doesn't do anything. So, like, bearing that in mind, how... For a young videographer starting off, or even for a marketer who's going to be dealing with a videographer, what would you say is the important kind of initial steps, or how authoritative should a videographer be when they're in the kind of the room with the marketing people, when they have to say, lads, no offense, but I got this? Not probably in those kind of condescending terms, but that kind of messaging needs to come across quite strong, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I think from my experience, it kind of depends on the company and the project. Sometimes you can tell that they have a loose idea and they're just looking for an end product and are kind of like leaving a good bit in your control. So you have the authority to kind of say, right, look, I can see your vision and I think we do this, and this, and they'll give some input and then you're able to discuss it. But then other times, like we were saying earlier, sometimes you can be in and they've discussed a lot beforehand and they already know what they want and they're bringing you in just to make their vision come true. So at times, just depending on who it is that you're working with, sometimes you can give a lot more feedback than with other times.
I think it's important to say, we probably haven't mentioned it yet, but the three of us have actually worked on a lot of campaigns and projects together and creating content. And I think, as you were saying there, I think it's very, very important when it comes to the stage of, like, me and you, Dave, would sit in a room and we'd say, look, we want to create a bit of content. We want to get this out of it. We hope it'll do this. We'll see. We'll come back a month after and see if it actually did it. But basically, the whole idea was we would come up with the basics of it, maybe a little bit of the narrative, the feeling, and then there's nothing that can be said, to having someone like Ray come in and offer that top level creativeness, and just take your video to another level.
Oh, 100%. No, like, I mean, you can have, and again, look, from a marketing perspective, you look at, okay, what's the objective of what we're doing as it filters into our overall strategy, the boring mechanical stuff. Then you'll go into the, okay, well, what if we're going to talk about kind of things like consumer psychology? What do we know about the mindset of these particular consumers? What do we want to achieve in terms of some sort of change in behavior, whatever the case may be? And then you come up with, okay, well, from our perspective, this is what we think is going to resonate with the consumer. This is what we think will be impactful. But for me, the ultimate delivery of that will fall on the videographer. You can kind of contribute in certain ways because you obviously know your customer more than the videographer is going to. But in terms of that creative execution, I'm very much I like to stand off when it comes to the creative process afterwards. As long as you present your top line, again, this is what we're looking to target. This is the mood that we want. This is the feeling that we want. This is who it's going to resonate with. And obviously you've got your different content forms. So we're going to chop it up in these variety of different ways, vertical, horizontal, YouTube, whatever the case may be. But ultimately for me, as long as they don't go completely off the walls entirely, you're kind of happy to work with or to let the videographer kind of do what they want to do. And I think that's why a lot of people, and I think you would as well, like, I would have a few videographers, a few graphic designers who I would constantly work with, because I know that they will pick up what I am trying to communicate, and then they are best placed to deliver that back in terms of what I want for the client.
Yeah, you see, like the more you'd kind of work with clients, you'd kind of get to know their branding and that they're coming to you with a specific kind of idea that has to fit their image, their colors, their vibe with the music. Like,
I think what you were probably saying there, which was what I was going to come in and say as well, I would slightly disagree with you, Dave, when you say, totally stand away, not totally stand away, but, stand back and let the videographer do it. But I suppose I've worked with you, Ray, so many times now, and we haven't mentioned, but like, the Christmas videos when I worked with O'Flynn's, my massage company, you done those videos with me, but I didn't stand back totally. Like, we spent long, painful days walking around Cork shooting those videos.
It was even more painful because you were involved.
That was it, yeah. I'm listening to him now saying I wish they all fecked off and left me alone. But as you said there, like, getting to know someone's style and branding, and getting to, you would know probably what I'm thinking, and I would know how you're going to roughly shoot something, so we kind of bounce well off each other. And I think that's very important. it's not, you know, and a lot of businesses nowadays, you know, obviously look, you know, small businesses or even big businesses, you know, they have budgets to work with, and some of them wouldn't have big budgets, some, you know, some of them wouldn't have any budget, so they're trying to get every penny's worth, like, you know. So I think it's a big investment to make, you know, and you want to get the right thing out of it. But I think, you know, you definitely have to work with someone like you to produce something good, you know, and it will come good in the end as long as you put the work in.
But I think, like, just to go back on what you were saying, like, I find it incredible, the differentiation in budgets between brands, yet the lack of differentiation in terms of the actual end product. Like, I've seen content that you've produced, Ray, for example, for X amount of money.
Thousands, Ray, put up the budgets, right? Everyone's listening.
Netflix budgets all the way.
Netflix budget. But that's a point that was made a few times to us, we'll say, once the piece of content actually is like, it's Netflix quality.
Yeah.
Whereas then you've got guys paying cinema houses almost 10 or 20, 30, 40, 50x what you would possibly charge. And the differentiation, it's very, very slim, do you know what I mean, between the two, which I think is just an interesting thing. Like, as things become commodified, cameras get better, cameras get smaller, ultimately it comes there, it's more and more about the skills of the artist, shall we say, or the person behind the camera, as opposed to the equipment itself. And I think that's opened up a huge opportunity for brands who would be typically considered local or SMEs to compete with some of the big boys in terms of content creation, because the people are out there that will deliver this content for them, regardless of what their budget is.
I think we both kind of mentioned there about having a relationship with someone like yourself, Ray, you know, that you can call on for, you know, keeping consistent with, you know, there's a whole level there of keeping consistency within your branding, your style, your content. You know, you're not just racing to the bottom and getting someone different every time just because they happen to be the cheapest on that Tuesday that you've done the phone calls round. But do you feel, you know, coming from your side of things, that, as Dave mentioned there about having, you know, competing with you know, video houses and agencies and all this kind of stuff, do you feel, we've done a podcast on it before about, you know, whether you should go to an agency or not, more so down the marketing route, but do you feel that a video production house that has the word agency or whatever it is after it, do you feel that they can be sometimes, I suppose, not justified, but, you know, straight away the budget is shot up, or sorry, the cost is shot up, like, you know, but you're, as Dave said, you're going to be getting the same video. Do you find it hard to compete with that?
No, I think it's just like different companies are going to have the different budgets. They're going to have a different idea of an end product. So some of them are going to see the likes of a John Lewis ad, and they have such huge productions because the video that they want is going to have to be shot on a massive stage. It's going to have to be like X amount of crew. The budget's going to have to be broken down between loads of people. It's a huge production. They need high-end cameras to get a certain amount of quality. So they're going to go to a production house because they're going to have the team and the access to be able to do that. Where the likes of somebody like me, if you came to me and I had all the connections, you could come to me with the same budget as kind of like a self-employed person, as like not in a big production company.
Yeah.
If I had the contacts, I'd be able to go out and do that. So you could come to me with a small budget and I'd be able to wrangle up the team, or a small budget and I could do the thing by myself, or come to me with a big budget and I'd be able to get the same kind of
outsource and get the other freelancers in.
Yeah. So it kind of depends. Like if you're experienced enough as a one-man band kind of thing to be able to get a crew and all that, you could take on those really high-end budgets and make it work. But if you haven't got that experience of working on big sound stages and working with a big team, and you're just used to like working with just you and a second cameraman, or you and a sound guy, just working with the SLRs because you haven't worked with the big high-end cameras, it can be like you're probably not going to get their massive budgets. You have to kind of build up over time. So depending on the company that's looking for the videographer, they're either going to be looking for somebody that's able to do the high-end budget stuff or the low budget stuff.
So similar to us in terms of having the specific content creators to go to, you would have your motion graphics guy or whatever it is, you know, you'd have your sound guy to go to. You'd probably have those in your head that you've worked with before, would you?
Yeah, well, the thing with me, like I over the years, I've just always had an interest in the media side. So I've learned how to use After Effects, I've learned how to use Photoshop, I've learned how to use all that. So to an extent, I can do an awful lot myself. So I can nearly produce something that a small production company would be able to work at just by myself. He's a
salesman as well. He's well able to pitch it there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But no, like I'm able to do it all with one person, so
Yeah.
I can produce something a little higher quality than
But that's great
somebody
for
that only knows how to use camera and has to get someone to do effects and somebody to do whatever afterwards. You might have to be looking for a bit of a bigger budget to outsource that to other people, but
that's great for a business to be able to work with you then, because you're able to offer a bit more. Or you might listen to them, you know, they might come in and say, look, we want a 30-second ad done for, you know, our social ads, you know, Facebook ads or whatever it is. But you might turn around and say, you know what, did you ever think about this? Did you ever try about using animation or graphics or whatever? You know, it's great to be able to offer that. The question I suppose I have the next to follow on that would be, obviously, you know, you're working with a lot of local businesses. You know, you've done stuff here in Cork, obviously in Dublin, all around the country. If someone like, you know, someone like us now, you know, working in a company that want to get some content done, if we approached you, what kind of things should we really think? Because we would have a lot of people listening here that are either own or marketing or involved in SMEs and local businesses around the country and abroad.
And abroad, our Mexican viewers.
But we would have a lot of people. So if they come to listen to you or they come to chat to you, what do you think they should have thought out or have on paper or, you know, really discuss before they approach someone like you or any content creator really?
See that it just kind of depends on the levels. Some people might be coming to you to do everything for them, and some might be coming to you to bring the vision alive. So it's the more that you can kind of come to the person with an understanding of what they have to do.
Yeah,
it's just better in that way.
So basically, knowing what you do at the end of the day. I suppose we've had that with marketing, I suppose, as well, where people don't know what marketing means. You know, they get a person in the marketing team, and it doesn't end up.
You still like marketing to me falls into the realm, but it's not accounting, it's not really supply chain, it's not IT, it must be marketing. Do you know what I mean? It kind of falls in.
They sit over there.
It falls between the cracks. Yeah, exactly. And like Ray, just in terms of when you're sitting down with a client, what's the kind of, and I know it probably varies client to client, but I suppose what would be the key things that you would look for from a client when you're looking to create a piece of content, particularly for a kind of a marketing, or we don't really call it advertising these days. Advertising is a dirty word, but like, what do you look for specifically from them that without that kind of thing, you're kind of like, I don't really know what they want here. It's kind of a shot in the dark. Are there certain specific things that you absolutely need for a client and that a client should be coming to you with if you're going to deliver the max quality content possible?
Well, usually when some clients come to me, the first question is, how much do you charge to make a video?
Yeah.
And that's like, how long is a piece of string? Do you want?
I'd say the general answer is probably add another 2 zeros on that, buddy.
Yeah. No, like the thing is, people will come to you asking, how much does it cost to make a video? There's so many different types of videos. There's so many different types of things that are involved in producing different types of videos. So if somebody comes to you just straight up going, how much does it cost to make a video? I never give an answer, because there's always the questions of, well, do we need actors? Do we need to shoot on a location in the company that you're in? Do we need to hire a soundstage? They're going to be totally different. If we can shoot at your location, there's no really location fees. If we have to hire somewhere, that's going to be whatever. So if you have an idea of what you want and a rough idea of the budget and what you kind of need, then that can kind of help, because straight up I'd be saying that type of thing. So do we need actors? Yes or no? Okay, is there people in your company that can do the pieces to cameras, or do we need to get somebody else? Can we shoot in your location, or are we shooting it somewhere else, and whatever? So there's loads of different factors. The more people can, or the more that they can come to you with what they want as a final product, the better. It's easier to kind of just come up with a budget idea and a price and everything, and kind of work from there. And sometimes,
with the corporate work that you would do, I suppose, like, are there many projects that people come to you with and you're just like, this is the worst idea I've ever heard? It's a talking heads video, the old corporate videos that you see constantly. Yeah. Like, how many times do people go, oh, we want something like this, and you're kind of like, yeah, this is not going to work. Like, I can do it for you. The film will be very, very high quality, but in terms of what you want to achieve, this is not going to achieve it because it's just boring. Instead, you should look at doing something a lot more exciting. And I suppose when, particularly with corporate clients, the pharmaceutical companies, the telecommunications companies, a lot of them kind of want to play it safe because there's an element of deniability there. But at the same time, we're now living in an attention economy, right? Whereas if you don't have something which is going to grab someone's attention, hold their attention, and resonate with them enough to actually have an impact upon their decision-making process as a consumer, be it B2B or B2C, then ultimately, no matter what high quality you produce from a videography perspective, ultimately it's not going to work. The onus isn't really on you to do that. It's probably on the onus of the marketer to do that. But how often do you kind of say, I don't think this is a good idea because it's just boring?
Since I've kind of gone out freelance, I used to work with a production company, and since I've gone out freelance, I've kind of gotten lucky that anybody that I've dealt with, I've kind of discussed stuff with them, and I haven't really come across that as much. When I used to work with the other place and they'd be dealing with whatever and then send me out on shoots, I would kind of come across these things and kind of look. I'd be like, right, when they were having these discussions, they either didn't talk about this or something. They should have done this that would make it much better. And I have been in them positions where I'd be on shoots and I'd be like, this could be so much better, but I'm the videographer on this. There was the director and things, so it's up to them. I've seen that from that side. I'm just kind of lucky that I went through them experiences, that when I do go out on my own, I have that previous experience that I'm able to discuss it straight up with the people and say, well, this is the final project you want. I think we should do this, 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 and this. And I've just kind of been lucky that it has been people that have agreed. I haven't had too many people, because if you look at a lot of my stuff, I do a lot of creative stuff. So I think when people come to me, they know that there's going to be
that's your style.
I don't have too many. I don't really have like the flat born white background that is the playing safe. So I don't think I get too many people coming to me looking to play safe videos.
The real corporate videos, yeah.
Yeah. So
I think so. When you're talking there about content, to follow on from that, then we talked a little bit about the change, I suppose, in structure and the real push, I suppose. Like it's gone, you read some blogs and they'll tell you it's all short form, keep it 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and then you read others and it's like, there's that sweet spot once you get over the 2 minutes, if you can keep people for 2 to 2:15.
I hate all those
videos. These kind of things. There's such a mixed message when it comes to long form, short form, and then throw in the mix. Now we have everything of, it used to be, landscape. Now it has to be portrait. It has to be square. It has to be, there's such a change. And I suppose that's because probably, you would know it, Ray, all the socials are trying to compete off each other by having something different, so they're all, did you notice a big, like, where do you stand when it comes to short form and long form content?
Again, I just bring it back down to what is the project. Sometimes you'll get people coming to you saying, we just have this little small thing that we need to do. And I'd say, right, if it's only going to be something that's only going to survive for about a week, let's do something quick, because you're competing with people just scrolling. You want something that's going to be attention grabbing at the start. People are probably not going to pay attention to this because it's not a massive project. So 30 seconds for this would be fine. And then this is that and it's done. And after a week, after it goes up, it's probably going to die after a couple of days and gone. But if it's a big, massive campaign, I'd kind of look at that going a bit more into do some short form stuff to grab people's attention, to throw it to a long form video that explains a bit more into the whole project. So if it's something that's going to be like a month-long project with a few things, I think that's where I think the long form might come in a bit better. Or if you're kind of like promoting something that's going to be a bigger thing down the line, that's where it might come in.
It's interesting now when you're saying, and you've already mentioned the word, we'd hear a lot in marketing, but the whole thumb stopping thing, it has to be attention grabbing. It's actually funny when you think about it. So you might push, like, we've done it. We've done 2-minute long form storytelling videos. We put all this work into the video, but what are we relying on to at the end of the day, really what we relying on to grab people's attention is a thumbnail picture. So like, it's funny, you put all that work into the video, but you still need a good image graphic, whether it's a screen grab from the footage or you create something to go with it. But like, that's so important, and that's probably something that a lot of people don't deliver on the end. They put all the work into the video and they just throw it up hoping for the best.
That's ultimately down to the marketer, though, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, like, if you take So when you're mapping out a campaign, the first thing you want to do is look at the customer journey.
Yeah.
Right. So if you take exactly what you said there, Ray, right, we're going to have our long form video, which is going to be hosted on YouTube as a means of getting people to that video. We're going to have a 10-second or 5-second vertical video on Instagram, swipe up, go view, whatever. Then after someone lands on your website, you're going to retarget them a week later with similar type of content, but maybe it's more sales focused based on the product that you're looking to. So I think that, and again, that's where that kind of the marketer working with the videographer, the graphic designer, for me becomes absolutely critical, because the messaging is all part of the same campaign, but the messaging changes depending on what stage the customer is at in relation to their overall journey. And again, having that person that can weave that overall kind of narrative through all the different types of content, vertical, square, 2-minute versus 20-minute versus whatever the case, maybe audio, Clubhouse, and all this kind of stuff that you need to weave into one kind of consistent narrative. And that's why I think, again, working with a small team who get the overall kind of brief, but at the same time understand
how people and social media work.
Correct,
basically.
exactly, yeah. Because again, like the amount of, like Ray, you know more about this than I, but the amount of people that kind of go in and go, well, I want a 2-minute video, or I want a 10-minute video, and that's it. And just deliver that, and there's no thought in terms of, well, how are they actually going to get to watch your 10-minute video? Like, what's the, do you know what I mean? So I think having that strategic approach to things is so critically important.
Yeah, like I think it's like I've often had people come to me and they'd say, I want like a 2-minute video or a 3-minute video, and I'd kind of discuss with them like, okay, so what exactly is it that we're doing and whatever. So you'd kind of see what the end goal was, and if it is something that is okay, we do need about 2 to 3 minutes because we need to fit in a good bit to let the people see what it is you're actually selling. Sometimes people will, like what you said, David, that you'd do a video like that and then just have a thumbnail, and then on the day throw it up and hope that people click on that long thing, that long video just from a single thumbnail. The amount of times that I'd have to talk to people and say, look, if you're doing this, people are scrolling. If it doesn't grab their attention, you've done all this for nothing. Do you have a week's build up to this long form video? Do you have a 10-second thing saying this video coming on Friday, posted on the Monday, something else on the Tuesday, on the Wednesday, on the Thursday, and then you drop the long form video so people know that it's coming, and then when it does come, they'll sit down and watch it. Where if you just throw up a long form video on the Friday without warning, people are going to scroll and see 10-second video, 30-second video, 10-second video, 3-5 minute long. Nah, I'm skipping past that, and it just won't grab people's attention. If you're doing something that long on a fast-paced social media platform, you need to have some kind of a heads up to people that this is worth watching, as opposed to, like, if you just drop it on that day, something that morning, and then drop it that evening, it's kind of going to get lost. So yeah, I think it does kind of depend on the team to be able to have that idea of, we do have the long form video, but we need to have a bit of a build up to it as well.
No, it's a great point. And how, like one of the things that I think marketers in particular are kind of struggling with at the moment is, obviously there's a huge, like you mentioned there, in terms of the evolution from Instagram being for photographers to kind of amateur photographers as phones evolved and stuff like that. And now you've got TikTok, which is just, to my mind, in terms of like amateur creators, is like one of the most impressive things that I've seen in years and years in terms of a kind of a content creation, homework,
Dave loves it. Dave loves it for the dancing.
It's brilliant. There's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely superb. It cheers me up in the morning.
Do you have your own dancing video? Yeah. Do you have your own dancing page?
Yeah, I've only got it on private. I only watch it myself.
Throw the link in the description. I'll have a check. I'll check in.
But when someone is coming up with a kind of a campaign, how involved are you then in terms of differentiating within that campaign what content should be user generated and how we're going to get that content to be generated by the user versus what content is best to be kind of more professional? Or do you get involved in that process at all? Or what would you say is the advice that you would give to kind of marketing teams or kind of creative directors in that regard? Because they're different sides of the same coin, but they should work synchronously with each other if done correctly.
Yeah, again, I'll just go back to, depends on how big the team is. If it's a small enough company that I'm working with, they might have an idea of, they've seen the bigger teams put out this campaign, they'd see it and go, I kind of want to do this. Can you make this happen for my company? And I'd have to discuss with them about what has to be done in them ways. But then if I am working with the bigger teams, like I said, they would already have that pre-planned, and I wouldn't have as much input in it because they'd be a bigger company and they'd have more say on, they'd be a lot stricter on their brand guidelines and everything. So I wouldn't have an awful lot of input to say, let's do this, because it might be totally off brand for them. It just, it kind of depends on the team, the kind of, if it's a high end or a kind of like lower, smaller end business that you're working with.
That makes sense.
We would have a lot of we already mentioned we'd have a lot of kind of small local businesses listening to us, and obviously look, with everything, as we already mentioned with your own industry, a lot of industries are kind of gone out the window and non-existent and waiting for an end date. But we've talked about it here, where a lot of businesses now are literally just, they may as well just put a close sign on their social media. They just stop using it, they think there's no point because the business is closed. But a lot of them then have kind of grabbed it and gone with it, and they're either doing, explainer videos, they're doing how-to videos, they're doing a lot of stuff basically in the background. Obviously they can't, get videographers in to do some work for them, or, obviously with restrictions and stuff like that. Is there anything that you would advise to maybe businesses that are doing their own videos, with the phones, or they might have a camera set up or whatever it is, but is there any kind of advice, on what businesses should look at, what what way to shoot videos? Is there any bits of advice that you can get people to think about maybe?
Yeah, well, I'd say if you are going to start doing stuff yourself, if you're not able to get a videographer in and you're doing stuff with the phones, I'd say first off, just kind of look at similar companies to yours on Instagram and kind of see what they're doing, and try to apply that to what your company is.
What do you call it, Dave?
Read and duplicate, R&D.
I'd say, like, if you don't really have the experience and you can't get somebody in, I'd say go with that, because it's probably gone to relate, and at least you won't be making too many mistakes because you'll be doing something similar. Just be careful that, like, if you are going to be throwing stuff up onto stories, that you do, like, everybody's talking about portrait these days, where in video world, portrait years ago was never spoken about, and it was always kind of like a never shooting portrait, landscape is the way. But with stories over the last few years, and then even on Instagram, it went from the square video to landscape, but now people have started going portrait, just because people are looking at their phones in portrait mode all the time. It's better to nearly
really think about the social you're putting it up on when you're shooting. Do you find yourself having to shoot stuff twice nearly, or can you work it in the way you shoot it once to cut it to portrait or whatever? Do you find yourself shooting, if someone tells you, look, there's some stuff's going to go on stories, some stuff's going to go on YouTube, do you feel like you have to specifically shoot content based for those platforms?
It would depend on the type of video. If it was kind of like if it was the likes of the things that we did with O'Flynn's, the Christmas videos, they were more kind of like cinematic, so they had to be landscape. There's no way you could kind of shoot that portrait, and if you were to throw it up on the stories, it wouldn't really work too well. So what I've started doing with the stories, if I can't do a proper portrait video, is come up with a kind of a portrait template where you do see the video landscape in the middle, and then have some branding top and bottom, so it still is filling the portrait space for like stories, but it's still kind of like keeping on brand, and you're not left with a lot of empty space. But if it's not something that's kind of like that, if it's something like it's a highlight video of an event or something, you can kind of play around with the shots and get the landscape thing into portrait and kind of like reframe it and move it around. So it depends on the project. Like that, if it is a highlight video of an event, you don't get a chance to shoot things more than once, so you kind of have to get a bit creative with, if they do want the portrait version as well. So yeah, if you're doing stuff that's kind of like a product videos, like when we were doing the things with the different gourmet sausages that we're doing, we were able to shoot that a few different times, so you'd get a few different angles and you'd be able to do the video that's for square, for landscape, and then we can do other ones that can kind of...
We were doing recipe videos, so yeah, it was just kind of, tailoring it then to the kind of keeping it very broad and very, I suppose a lot of empty space that you could probably play around with, to cut things and chop things and, You know, I
Yeah.
suppose that's something that you do definitely do. And
Yeah, like if it's something that you're going to do that's like that, we were able to control. We could shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot. Again, beforehand, you'd kind of discuss and say, what is the end product of this? Is it just going to be landscape for the feed, or is it going to go up into stories? Do you want whatever? If you do know ahead of time that it's going to go to stories, you would shoot them different shots just to kind of, because even if it's landscape and you do scale it for a portrait, you could be cutting out a lot of important information either side. So you'd have to shoot it properly to get the right shot. So yeah, it kind of depends on the project. If you're, like I said, if you're just covering an event, you only get the one shot to do things. So you have to be creative. If you can actually control the shots beforehand, you find out, you shoot for them shots then.
One thing that I'm particularly interested in, and I wouldn't profess to know a huge amount about it. I try to do a bit of research on it because I just find it very, very interesting. But one of the last things that I think a lot of marketers think about when they're looking to create a bit of content is the music, and how the music is all about mood management, resonates with the consumer, kind of sets the tone, and you can use different kind of techniques and stuff there, which I'm kind of interested in. Can you just talk through some of the, even at an abstract level, kind of even some of the techniques and stuff like that you would use that when you're at kind of idea generation stage, that you go, yeah, okay, I'm going to shoot it in this way, but this music or this style of music is going to be so important here because I'm looking to hit this particular tone or this particular mood or something like that?
Yeah, again, every project is different. Sometimes somebody will come to you with music ahead of time, so you're able to listen to the music before you actually shoot the video. When you have an idea of how to, you'd probably know that it's going to be a minute-long video. You've been given a 3-minute-long piece of music, so you have to kind of cut that down so it flows and fits in the minute. You have that beforehand, and you're able to think of the shots and be able to think, well, there's a fast drum roll here. So if I get a couple of really fast shots that aren't really, really important, but they're visuals that you need, like if you have the music beforehand, you can actually work the video to properly cut to the music. Sometimes you'll go in and you'll just shoot a lot of stuff, and then they're like, right, cool, we need music for this. So you then have to try and think, right, what kind of feel are we looking for the video? Is it fast, upbeat tempo that they're kind of looking for? Is it kind of slow melodic? And then you have to start looking through galleries and galleries and galleries of music, which can take a long time to find the right bit of music and then try and make it apply to the video.
I think it's even, we talked about it here last week in preparation of you coming up. We were talking about Super Bowl week, and you know, the projects that we've mainly worked on together would have been Christmas videos. So you know, it's definitely a mood to be set. You know, you're trying to get people really captivated, you know, as we talked about here, you know, hopefully shed a tear, you know, that's kind of your aim for Christmas. Whereas then Super Bowl last week, it's a total different style of ad. It's much more down the comedic route, and you know, it's fast paced, and it's more about the speech that's going on more. So you know, the videos we would have had no audio from actors or anything like that. It would have been all around the music and the shots. So it's a total different style. So like, do you think music plays a big part in that one, or is it more about what's going on screen in terms of, you know, watching and video and audio more so than the music? I'll change.
I suppose it kind of depends on the company. Some of them are going to be products, and some of them are going to have like different services, and some might just want to have this big flashy ad that has no actors in it. It's just showing products and everything. So there might be a lot of the music might really matter because they want to have specific shots where the image is hitting on the screen or whatever, and they'll have the music that like really emphasizes the shots of the clip. And then some of them might be actors playing out something and not really show anything of the product until the very end. So in them ones, the music again is just kind of like setting the tone to go with the actors. Whereas if it's more of a product one without any actors in it, the music could be playing a part where it's like really emphasizing the cuts and the shots to like really
relying
grab
on the music at that stage. Like
yeah, like the music does play a really big part in it. And one thing that when you get the video, like I said, you'll have to find the music and then cut the entire video to the music. This happens so much that when videographers do stuff, do edits with tracks, they're always trying to cut it to the beat, and they're trying to, whatever the flow of the music is, they try to get clips that fit with the flow of the music. And then by the end of the edit, you send it on and people will be like, yeah, I love the entire video. By the way, can we change the music? thinking that it's just, oh, take out that music,
Yeah.
put something else in. But music plays such a big part that you're not just putting the music in and then creating a video and the music is just there. The music is as much a part of the video in most cases as the actual clips are. So if you try to take out the audio and put something else in, you have to nearly restructure the video in a lot of cases, because it's not going to cut in the same beats, and where you had that slow bit is now a fast bit with drum. So it might not work. Some people don't see that and they just think, oh, it's easy to just change out the music, but the music is nearly as important. And
I think even if you take out a piece of the visual, that you're after shooting, keep the same music, but even changing or adapting the visual is obviously going to throw the whole thing out of whack as well, really, like, isn't it?
yeah.
It's basically either taking a few minutes away from where you're on the beat, the mood changing, or it's going to add a bit, like, so it's probably restructuring the whole thing there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's the same. Like, it's, if you have the edit done and it's done to the music, and then someone says, can you take that clip out or whatever, you can nearly put a different clip in, but it will fit timing wise, or if they ask to fit more clips in, a lot of times you can work around and it's not too bad. But there are some specific, like some tracks that are like, they're cutting specifically on beats. So if you change the entire music after an entire edit, it just totally ruins the flow of everything.
Brilliant. Well, I think, look, for anyone listening, I suppose, I hope they got a lot from that.
No, definitely. I think, like, for me, the creative is the differentiator, right? If everyone is using Facebook ads in relatively the same way, Instagram ads in the same way, Google, all this, everyone has access to all of these tactics and tools, right? So there's no competitive advantage to be derived from them. Yeah, you can use them a bit better than other people, and you can have data and all that stuff. But in terms of the core, again, I always say it to either clients or to students, we live in an attention economy. And therefore, if you're talking about brand strategy, brand means different. And the core differentiator now is the creative. And I think for people to understand the creative process, the ups of it, the downs of it, the importance of, like we mentioned, music, the importance of understanding a certain style, and then just in terms of like the project management kind of side of it, do you know what I mean? Like, even simple things like working with the people who can deliver specifically for your organization is so critically important. So no, I think people have gotten a lot out of that.
Perfect. I think if anyone wants to find you, Ray, you can find you on Instagram, the usuals.
Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Every one of them is Ray Keogh Media.
Perfect. We'll throw it into the links anyway. But look, really, really appreciate that. Hopefully everyone that's listening has definitely gotten something. And thanks very much for listening.
Yeah, that was brilliant, Ray. Cheers. Thanks very much.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, guys.